welcome back to Coach's Corner. Appreciate everybody who's subscribing to us and following us. Appreciate everything on that. Today, again, boxing has many different facets to it, and our guest today brings a different facet.
I'm Coach Dave. Welcome back to Coach's Corner.
Come on.
I have Coach Mike Campisano, who runs the UConn Boxing Program at the University of Connecticut. Welcome, Mike. We appreciate you coming down today.
Thanks, Dave. This is quite an honor.
Yeah, no, it's a great thing for you to come down here. And, for many people who live in Connecticut, University of Connecticut is known for basketball. Women's and men's basketball kind of take the precedent up there. And, tell us a little bit about your program and how it started there for you guys.
So 2015 was when we started the program. They had a bunch of kids that had a little club going. I had previously been at the Coast Guard Academy with Tommy Burrell. Tommy Burrell and I boxed together at Central Connecticut State. But I was an assistant. I wanted to be a head coach. And I knew that they had a little club, and I knew who was kind of running the club. So I had asked him, I said, hey, can I come up sometime and talk to these kids? And I want to introduce, college boxing to them. He said, they'll never want to compete. I said, well, let's make it. We took a handshake. I said, I'd make a deal. If they're willing to compete, then you turn everything over to me. If they're not, then I won't bother you again. So we had a handshake. I went up there. They bought into it right away, and now 9 years later, the program is probably the largest active sport on campus.
Yeah. So for everybody who doesn't realize, there is a full-blown college boxing. Even though you guys are a club sport, it is organized throughout the country. You guys are competing with other schools. It's not mandatory. So how do you work as far as recruitment, training, and what is your process there?
So, and you let me know. I go into the whole history of college boxing when you later on when you want to do that. Normally in the past, I had let the kids kind of recruit themselves. But I had a sit-down talk with Ray Barone, who is
West Point.
West Point. He's a retired coach from West Point. And he is like the guru of college boxing, and numerous national championships teams. And he asked me how I was recruiting. I said, well, we do a recruitment day. The kids recruit the kids. Prior to this, I would bring 2, 3, 4 kids maybe to the national tournament that would qualify. I'd walk away with 1 or 2 All-Americans, third place, but we never got to that point. He says, you got to find them. You got 30,000 kids at the school. Right. You have to go recruit the kids. And the following year, I did that. I was like a timeshare. When you walk by a guy selling a timeshare, and they always say, "Don't make eye contact." I was like that. I stood in front of the student center until I got kicked out. Then I went out in front of the Gamble. I had a sign, and anybody that looked like an athlete, I went and I grabbed. And I was surprised I didn't get charged with assault. Men, women, and I said, "Hey, you look like an athlete. Let me talk to you." And then I started recruiting that way. This past year, and then this is the third year I've done it. I've gone with the kids. I'll go in the student center, and I kind of give them an idea of what to look for. This is what I want to look for. Somebody's walking by, and they look, and they say, we have a bunch of signs that say UConn Boxing. If they look and they turn their head, I don't want them. Don't make contact. But it's that kid that's staring, that kind of looks athletic, then we're going to grab them. So that's how it
moves a little slow by.
That's how we've been recruiting. So
well, you figure with 30,000 students, right? Connecticut has a lot of good talent right across the board anyway in boxing. If you could pick up a percentage of that.
Yeah, right. And that's what Ray said. He says, you got to have at least 5,000 kids there that are Division I athletes that don't want to play sports anymore. You got to find them. And that's what we've been doing. Last year, 2 years ago, we had 200 kids that tried out. We had 100. We do a boot camp for a week, just all conditioning. We had 100 kids that made it. We had to cut 60 kids because we can only carry 60. But I had 20 returning. This year, I had 20 returning. we ended up cutting. I don't know how many kids we ended up getting together and cut, but it was over 100 kids we ended up cutting. Tell them to come back the next year. Because we had 21 returning this year also, and we carry 60. So I had 40 brand new men and women on the team this year.
Wow. I mean, tell us a little bit about the league as far as the other colleges, and we'll get back to talking about you and your team. And I know you guys just started this year. You're back to tryouts and workouts and getting ready for the season. And you got a lot of stuff. But kind of walk us through the college league.
So the NCBA was started in 1976. From 32 to 60 is when the NCAA was college boxing was an actual full-blown NCAA sport. So for almost 30 years. It was so popular. I think it was 48, Joe Louis fought at Madison Square Garden that same night in front of 11,000 people. That same night, University of Washington had a home show at 15,000 people. Had more people at their home show than Joe Louis had at a championship fight. So it was huge. In right around the 50s is when it hit its peak. The problem was the matchmaking wasn't like it was today. There was a lot of overmatched bouts. Kids were getting hurt a little bit more than they are today.
Right.
And then in 1960, they had a death. Charlie Moore, of his University of Washington, a Wisconsin boxer, died after the Nationals, and the NCAA dropped it, stayed dropped. And then some schools in the East remained, such as Penn State, Westchester, which is no longer around, and a lot of schools in the West, and they kept their clubs, and they would kind of compete locally. And then in '76, they got together and they started what's called the NCBA, which is the National Collegiate Boxing Association. And back then, like when I fought, we fought under AAU. Okay. Now it's with USA Boxing being the governing agency, right? We fight under.
How many
under
colleges are part of this?
So right now we're at 39. We're about to be 40. And when it was at its peak with the NCAA, they only had 50. But you have major schools. I mean, you have small schools such as Trinity College, Lock Haven University in Pennsylvania, but you also have USC, Penn State, UCLA, Ohio State. You got some major schools that still carry teams.
That are carrying teams here.
Right.
What's the criteria? Because it changes. I know we talked about this previously. For fighters, it's different than if they're competing for a local LBC.
Yeah, so what we do to make sure we don't make that mistake that we did, 40 years ago, is number one, it's all non-scholarship throughout the entire country, and a boxer can't have more than 10 bouts coming into college. If he has more than 10 bouts, can't compete. He can compete in a local show, but he can't go into our regional tournament or our national tournament. But it's got to be 10 bouts or less. Now, they don't want anybody starting at 8 years old coming in with 50 fights. That's just not what college boxing's for. Yeah. You can go to Champs Gym and box out of Champs Gym and compete, at the USA boxing level. Once you're into college, you can walk away with 50 bouts, by the time you graduate. But you got to come in with 10 bouts or less.
Yeah. So at your program, because it is a club, and you've been around boxing, you've been around, you're affiliated with COBA, you work, throughout USA Boxing in Connecticut, known. What is when you came into the program, what was the response, and what were you seeing with these kids? Were they aware of what they were in for?
Had no clue.
Or was it they thought that, they were going to hit bags and...
They had no clue. It's taken us really last year, 2023. We ended up fourth in the country team-wise. We finished 4 points behind Air Force. That was the first year that we ever competed like a team. So it took 8 years.
Yeah.
They had no clue. They had no clue.
The military academies, they have to box.
They have to box. They got to take it for a class.
Yeah, they got to take it for a class whether they compete or not. I know I've been up at West Point with a couple of my guys sparring when Coach Barone was there, and it's amazing to see the amount of people in the facility that they have up there. And then, coming to our gloves, they're always very competitive and everything like that. So coming in, you got a tough task here because you're looking to create a program. You're looking to create, a boxing culture. Coming from your background, was that a little frustrating in the beginning?
It was very tough. But I kept my goals, and I knew that I just had to get the kids to buy into what I was trying to do. And it took a good 8 years, and it took the kids of constantly sending them what other schools, civilian schools, were doing, what other military schools were doing. I would send videos of how University of Washington would do their tryouts, and this is what we have to do, guys, in order to compete at that level.
Yeah.
So it took a while, and now it's just steamrolling. It's steamrolling. I had one of my females was in class with Paige Beckers. Mm-hmm. And they were talking, and Paige Becker said to her, "Hey," when she told her she boxed on the boxing team, you guys had a great year last year. So for somebody on the girls' boxing team or basketball team, as we talked,
yeah,
to even hear that we have so it's steamrolling. It's steamrolling big time.
Now, you don't really have a full-blown facility.
We don't.
So you're working.
We are in a wrestling room, a mat room, that. When I first started out, I had 2 heavy bags that I would put on chairs and lean them against the wall. Now we have 12 heavy bags, but we got to take them down and set it up every night.
Right.
We have a ring that I kind of made that it's a roped ring. It's about 16 feet, but we have to take that down and set it up every night. We're in a shared mat room.
Shared facility, right? So what's your workout schedule? How many nights a week? And what are the requirements? Because you are a club. How do you figure out who's going to compete, who's not, and go from there?
So Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays is really all the time that I have with them. I have great captains this year, great captains. And there's a running app that the kids have to be on, that Strava app, so they got to log their miles. We'll kick them off if they don't log their miles. And the kids will get together also on their own on those other nights or on the weekends, and they'll do some workouts with either the mitts, but just 3 days a week. They're usually with me probably a good 3 months before they'll even spar. And then once Yeah, and then once we get them sparring, then you can kind of start telling, who's going to be what weight, and then we've also changed. A big thing we've changed also is in the very beginning we took anybody, whether you wanted to compete or not. Mm-hmm. Now it's a prerequisite. We ask them, do you want to compete? If you don't want to compete, we're not taking you. The other thing we tell them too is when I tell you that you're ready to box, you're going to box. You can't tell me that you're not ready. And what I tell them is I always use the example of the basketball team, men's and women's. I said, if you're the backup center and the center gets hurt, and Coach Gino goes up to you and says, "Hey, hop in there," and you say, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
You're going to kick you off the team. Yeah. I go, so it's the same for us. I guarantee you I'll never put you in before you're ready, but when I think you're ready, you're going to box. And if you're not, then we ask them to leave. So that whole culture has changed, and the kids have really bought into it.
Well, now they're starting to see a little bit of success. You've changed the culture, right? You know what you're doing as far as running the program. I didn't realize you guys were 8 years in.
It just our 9th year.
It doesn't seem like. But actually, you're right, because this will be our 9th year as a gym.
Yep.
Well, actually, I'm sorry, our 11th year.
Okay.
So you guys were
pretty new when we boxed you guys up in Hartford. I think was one of the first times that you and I met.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So now you're doing this. You have a full-time job.
I'm a police officer in Bristol. Right.
So it's like you're juggling a lot of.
It's tough, and it's a lot easier now. When you're winning, it's always easier.
Yeah.
And that was a tough thing, in the beginning. You can get some kids that are sparring, and boy, that you think that, well, they're gonna kick some butt, and they go and they lose. And one of the first times we went up to West Point, I went with 5 kids. We had 5 kids. This is back in 2016. We walked away with 5 stoppages. We got stopped.
Yeah.
So it's constantly trying to motivate the team when you're not winning. It's very tough.
We
it's
know
very tough.
boxing's a tough sport. Okay, first of all, because people don't realize, and I've talked about this with fighters, coaches, everybody that basically comes on the show that's affiliated with boxing. People don't realize what it really takes to box, whether you box as an amateur, as a pro. If you get ready to fight, one round spar, they think, oh, no, they don't understand. And there's a lot of work, and it goes by, some kids, their DNA is they're going to get hit, and that's it. They're going to shut down on it. It's over for them. Some kids, they get hit, okay, and they rise up. But you can't simulate that. It's not a scrimmage and everything else. In sparring, you bring them into sparring, especially they could feel it out a little bit. But once they get into that competitive level, that's not simulated anywhere. So they don't know what that really is like.
Right.
Now they're boxing under the lights of people, judges, and everything else. And you're part of changing the culture there because it's a club. In the beginning to where you are now, do you find that people weren't taking it seriously enough for you?
Yeah, it was. It was frustrating with that. I had some kids that they wanted to learn how to throw a punch, so at 2 a.m. they can get in a fight outside the stands and win. I had some that just wanted to get in shape. And UConn's about an hour from me, from Bristol. So it's an hour each way. And I sat the kids down a couple of years ago. It's about 3 years ago, and I said, this is when we said, hey, you got to compete. I said, I'm not driving an hour up and an hour back to teach somebody how to get in a fight in a bar or how to get in shape.
Right.
If I'm going to continue doing this, we're going to compete, and we're going to be competitive. And it was about 3 years ago that they really bought into it, and it's just, like I said, it's just kind of steamrolled. And like any sport, once you win, it's easier to believe the coach and buy into it than when you're losing. When you're losing, you start, and that's why, right? How sometimes people will jump around with different trainers. They'll never take the blame themselves.
Yeah.
They'll find a different trainer. So,
what's the response from the university?
University's been tough. I want to blame UConn, but I don't, because it was like that when I was in college at Central Connecticut. We're a club sport.
Right. But if you go around the country, okay, club sports, there's club baseball, there's club basketball, football, there's some big programs, and why do you think, boxing is a mainstream sport out there right now? Why do you think it is that?
I think there's just so many clubs at UConn. And I keep telling the kids, I'm not leaving until we get one of those blue signs on 84 that says National Champs. And I drive by it every day, and I tell them I will pay for it and make it because we're a club. I know that the school's not going to do it. It may get taken down, but I guarantee you for one day we're going to have a sign on 84 that says UConn Boxing National Champs.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think maybe because there's so many clubs, they give me a decent budget to work with. I look at other schools, and they don't even have anywhere near as good as budget as we do.
But you guys are traveling. So what's the competition around the country? Talk about that. I mean, because, look, I know on the East Coast, Lock Haven, Penn State, you're getting kids from the Philly inner city area, Trinity, Hartford area. These are little hotbeds of boxing alone. So anybody in those schools. But talk about in these tournaments, what was it like taking your kids the first time for you in a big tournament with all these different schools?
Yeah, I mean, we travel a lot. We probably travel. We're probably one of the top 2 or 3 schools in the country that travel the most. We will start next week, October 5th, and we're away every weekend until the first week in December. And no other school I know, no other school on the East does that at all. In the beginning, yeah, they didn't know what to expect. They had no clue what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
Now 9 years later, the kids know. And I like to get them outside of our region. We're going to Ohio State in 2 weeks. We'll go to Seattle, Washington in January. I like to get them out of, not boxing the same
Right.
boxers, the
Over
same
and over,
schools, right, over and over. The styles tend to be similar, Army style, Penn State style, UConn style. Everybody has their own style of teaching or coaching.
Going by the coaching.
Right. So I like to get them out there because they're going to see those kids at the Nationals.
Right.
So we do a lot of traveling.
For the criteria for your team, what does it take for a team member to join the travel team? Not join them, but when you're sitting down, okay, you're going to Ohio State and you're looking at your team and you're saying, okay, and I'm sure, Ohio State in the same situation as UConn, a bigger school, more people to choose from. You have a lot of hotbeds out there in Ohio for boxing. When you're sitting down and saying, how many kids do you take to travel with you?
Well, this semester, the only ones that will travel in our box will be my boxers that boxed last year.
Okay.
Nobody that's brand new. Next semester, we'll start getting the newer boxers, unless somebody has some previous experience or they really picked it up.
And they fit a weight class maybe for you.
And they fit a weight class. But I'll get in my head, or I kind of have in my head already who I think is going to go what weight.
Mm-hmm.
In March, we do our national qualifier, but the kids will box off. They'll challenge each other to that weight class. Sometimes it's who I want. Sometimes it's not because who I wanted didn't win in the box offs. But those, like for instance, we're going to Lock Haven the 26th of October. And then we're going down to Navy November 1st. So I just asked the captains yesterday, give me the names, who wants to go on those trips, and then I'll submit those names, and then we'll match them up, from there. So I kind of throw it out to them first,
Right.
and then if I get somebody who hasn't been boxing, then I'll pull them aside and say, hey, we got to get a bout this semester. We're not, we got to fight.
So, with all this moving around and everything, what's the workout? Now, I know you've been around the gyms, and I know what it's like. You know what it's like to get a fighter prepared. Now you're at a club level. Say you're taking 6. What's your preparation for a tournament like this? And how long are these kids? Because you only have them 3 nights a week.
I have them 3 nights a week. So the ones that we're going to Canada October 5th, they just sparred for their first time back this past Monday. They'll spar this tomorrow night, and they'll spar 3 days next week. But they've known to come back in shape. But I had a lot of them over the summer at Coba, at the Charter Oak Boxing Academy. I had a lot of kids that worked out there. That's kind of our off season training home. Yeah. But they were told, come back in shape and get some workouts in the gym. I've sent, I sent them to you, and so I'll reach out to different gyms, and they know that they should be working out in the off season.
Yeah. Now, when you get out at these tournaments, what are you seeing talent-wise?
Some good, some bad. I've always said I'll stick by my statement. Our finals of our nationals, I think our finals, those 2 boxers can hang in any national Golden Gloves tournament. Probably not maybe our quarterfinals, maybe our semis, but we get to our finals. Those 2 boxers, there's some great boxing. There's some really good boxing. You have Stephanie Simon, who was a three-time national champ from Navy. She was a two-time U.S. champ, USA boxing champ. Was an alternate for the Olympic team. She's going pro.
She's fighting soon.
She's fighting soon, right? Richard Van Sicklen was a national champ from Washington. He's if he's 15-1 as a light heavyweight. So we've had some good talent. But going back to it's college boxing, most of the boxers have never boxed before college, and most of the boxers won't box after college. And that's really what college boxing has always been. It's those 4 years.
Well, if you really take it and you look at college sports, okay, what's the percentage of people going to the pros?
Right.
In other sports, right?
Right.
Their last game in college, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, boxing, might be their last game ever as an athlete, But where do you see your organization going in the future? Do we see college boxing becoming a legitimate sport? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there schools years ago like Marquette? I believe there was one school in Michigan. Weren't they collegiate sports, or were they clubs at that time?
After 60, they've all been clubs. They've all been clubs. There's talk every now and then with newer coaches about trying to petition to go back to the NCAA. I hope to God we never do, because now you're bringing in scholarships.
Right.
You have what I think it would be the death of us to go under the NCAA. When Tommy Brill and I were at the Coast Guard Academy, we were the winningest team at the Coast Guard Academy. One year we had 3 national champs. We got put under the varsity sports, even though we weren't a varsity sport. The following year, we went to do a show up in Winchester, Massachusetts. Really beautiful show. The kids are actually doing that this coming November 9th. We found out the day before that we couldn't do that show because the lawyer ended up looking at everything, and because we were under varsity sports, said it didn't fit the NCAA criteria. Although we tried to argue we weren't an NCAA sport, but because the Coast Guard Academy had put us under that with them. So there's a lot of different rules. I hope to God we would never go back to the NCAA.
Yeah, so you guys, your own governing
agency, right.
So everything goes through
USA Boxing.
USA Boxing, and now you have a unique situation where, in the state, your fighters can go and you work with other gyms. Is that beneficial to you and your team?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. We have so many gyms, great gyms in Connecticut. There's probably not a gym out there in Connecticut where I wouldn't trust one of my boxers in the off season to spar, and I'll reach out to them because I always tell them, if you're gonna go to a gym, I don't want you sparring until I make contact with that, because we know how gyms work.
It gets out of hand,
right? But in Connecticut, great gyms, and they've all been. I attribute a lot of my success to the kids that are getting the gyms in the off season. And I learn. Yeah. Listen, this is the way I want you to do it. Coach Dave may show you a different way. I want you to learn his style. I want you to learn different ways. And that's a good thing too. They'll go to other gyms and then they'll come back. Hey, Coach Dave showed me this way. And that's good. There's a couple things that in boxing you have to do a particular way. But other than that, coaches have different variations.
Coaches have styles.
Right.
Fundamentals of boxing have not changed.
Exactly. You
got to jab the same way. You got to throw your right hand the same way. You got to throw your hook the same way. Are there variations? Of course there's variations. Your footwork needs to be your footwork.
Right.
And you need to be in shape.
Right. Correct. Right.
Because, we know. Now, you're a club, right? These kids are going to school. They're out. Do you run into the factor of kids not being ready? And how do you handle that?
Yeah.
Now, you got a kid going to a competition, right? You're penciling them in, okay, 147, I got so-and-so. What happens if you feel he's not ready, or you see maybe that's got to be a little frustrating.
Yeah, I've been pretty fortunate with that. They are college kids, so they're trying to juggle the parties and everything else. Once in a while you'll have some weight issues with kids because they're eating in the dining hall. They're making dumb choices in the dining hall. But for the most part, we've been pretty fortunate, or I've been fortunate with kids being ready. If physically, mentally, that's a different.
Mentally is a whole.
It's a different ball game.
As a whole,
Right.
See, and that's where it might differentiate for you. You have kids that are, and not to take away, don't take this the wrong way. A kid boxing in a local gym who's competing as an amateur, from a novice to an open class fighter, he's gearing to get ready for 30 fights, 20 fights, whatever it is, starting his career. You have a kid in a club, is he taking it the same seriousness for that?
Right.
Like making weight, making sure, like, okay, I got to be ready for this, be ready for the team. It's got to be a little frustrating, I would think, at times.
Yeah.
Coming from your background.
I think after that first bout,
Yeah.
whether they win or lose, going to the show, seeing the other competition, and after that first bout is when they learn how to take it serious. They learn where they are and where they need to be. And even if they win, they're still learning where they need to be in order to be at that elite college level. So I would say after that first bout is really when everybody kind of learns where they are, where they need to go.
It's real now.
Yeah. But I've had kids in tears, and nobody. You understand? I understand. People in boxing, and nobody understands. And I think John Scully said it the best. He had a quote once about walking it, being alone in the locker room,
yeah.
right? Some of our shows, you're maybe 1,000, 2,000 people, and you're in there in a 20-foot ring, just you and him, and you got to perform.
Yeah,
it's intimidating.
It is at not only at your level. I've seen fighters at every level, some whatever, but the anxiety, the build-up, all the emotion of the training, and then you're finally there, and it's like there's nowhere to go. You're out there,
right?
And and if things change up in the fight, it's not going your way. You have to make adjustments.
Yeah. It's a great video that I'll show the kids too of Kevin Rooney and Mike Tyson. When Tyson was about 15 years old, crying. Kevin Rooney's shoulder before he was going to fight, and I said, "Hey, these emotions you have, these are normal emotions. I want you to have these emotions. If you were so confident, you weren't worried, then I would be concerned. If you're worried, it means you're thinking about it. So I'll try to get them to use that in a positive advantage. Hey, that's great. That's great. You're nervous. You should be nervous. That means you're thinking about the fight.
Yeah, no, of course.
I get nervous at the ones that, I'm not worried about it, Coach. Those are the ones I get worried about.
They don't know what's coming.
Right.
They don't. Then those, I'm with you because even today, I'm still like, I'll pace and I'll have my routine before a fight.
Absolutely.
Of everything. It's a thing.
Right.
Look, we have fights under our belts, right? We've been working with fighters, but still, you're worried. You have a fighter that you're preparing to go in, whether it's amateur or pro, and they're throwing hands.
Right.
So you want to be prepared. Are the rules any different?
So our rules are a little bit different. And our rules were changed specifically for safety reasons. So we don't have that death that happened in 1960, or we don't have the injuries that kind of plagued us towards the end of the NCAA time. So we use 12-ounce gloves no matter what weight. So even our lower weights, our 112s, our 119s, everybody uses 12-ounce gloves. We box 2-minute rounds, whether you're an open or whether you're a novice. Everything is a 2-minute round. And then our weight classes are pretty similar, but they're just a little bit different. But the big thing is the 2-minute rounds and the 12-ounce gloves. But still the same, 3 3 standing 8s in a round, 4 in a fight.
Headgear, all
the
that.
headgear is the same, correct? Right.
I was going to ask you a question on the rounds and the 2-minute rounds and weight classes. On the weigh-ins, is there a give, or is it 147 spot on 147?
So our when we make our shows, we'll do a lot of scratch weights, like for Ohio State, Penn State. We'll do a lot of scratch weights where coaches will agree. If the weight is 132 and I have my kid is right now at 130, I submit his name and West Virginia comes back and says, I got a one. He's 137. I said, oh, coach, can you get him down to 134? Even though the weight's 132. So we'll do those scratch weights we'll agree on.
Right.
In March, when it comes to our regional tournaments, then it's game on. You got to be on whether you're getting on there and losing everything you're wearing to make weight. You got to make weight, and at the national tournament, it's the same thing. You got to be on. 132 is 132, not 132.3.
Yeah.
It's 132.
Now, as far as the other schools preparing for fights, in the States and in where we are, we know the fighters, we know the gyms. If our fighter's fighting so-and-so, we kind of have an idea who they're fighting. Maybe there's some tape on them, or we talk to another coach. How are you as far as, you're going to Ohio State, the guys that you're fighting, is there tape? Is that part of the preparation? Do you know who you're fighting, or do you say, okay, you're fighting so-and-so, but we really don't know too much about them?
Right.
How is that?
So some of the kids you'll know. At Penn State, we have a big fight. We actually have the main event at Penn State coming up October 12th with my 175 pounder, and he's fighting he's fighting a national runner-up. He took 3rd place. They're going to have the main event. He knows all about the kid. So as you get better, the kids get to know. You get to know the better kids. In the very beginning, if I get somebody with no fights, I tend to not even tell them their name. It's the worst thing I always say you could do. Because the first thing they do, they write to Facebook and they start looking up and they get in their head what the kid looks like, right? And then they start following them on Instagram and everything. Don't worry about what his name is. I'll tell you, he's got 2 arms, 2 legs, and he's not blind. Yeah, that's all you need to know.
He's gonna punch if you don't punch back.
Absolutely. But to answer your question, as the kids get better, I've had some success lately. So the other kids know my kids, and my kids know the kids. They know who they're fighting, and so as far as that, and there's plenty of film out there on YouTube and
now everything is easy. I mean, you go to YouTube and you find fighters across the board, or their Facebook or their Instagram. Everybody's posting stuff up.
Right.
You'll find some information out there. Your style, Coach. What's the UConn style? So if I'm sending a kid to you, or I'm coming in and I'm saying, Coach, I want to box.
We mirror.
What's the style there?
We mirror a lot of John Scully, a lot of Marlon Starlin. I always tell these kids, I'm going to teach you. We go a lot with that high guard. And not so much of a pro style. I said, I'm going to teach you how to win at the amateur level. You want to go pro, we'll change things up. Trust me. But I'm going to teach you things you need to do at the amateur level to win. So we do a lot of that high guard, more so than a pro style, pro stance.
Defensive to offensive.
Yep.
Scoring.
Correct.
Scoring points and everything like that.
Right. Which is actually a little bit different than when I boxed with Johnny Callis. It was more of that Olympic style, on your toes, constantly moving, throwing that jab, moving. That was more of a Johnny Callis style.
What are you seeing around the country as far as styles?
It varies. It really does. It really varies.
Who would you say right now that you've seen toughest school out there as far as talent?
University of Connecticut.
Besides yourself. Good answer. I like that.
Ohio State is really they got a young coach there who's doing a fantastic job. Penn State has really been the last couple of years a good friend of mine that I've gotten to be good friends with. He's doing a bang up job there. West Virginia is on a bounce back from where they were. They would always have one or two. Now they're coming with like a team.
Mm-hmm.
It's like our Western New England gloves a lot dominates in the Golden Gloves. I think the East dominates in our national tournament.
Right.
There's a lot of good boxing up and down the East Coast of the country.
Now, walking into these tournaments or bouts, do you think you have the UConn wow factor when you walk in? Do you think teams look at you and say, "Oh, you're coming out of UConn
Not at all.
because of the programs that are coming out of there"?
No, because they know the kids all know. I wish they did, but they all know what college boxing's about.
Yeah.
And they know that a kid from Lock Haven could be just as tough, if not tougher, from a kid from Penn State or USC.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing that I love about college boxing. Is in what makes it so competitive is you have a school such as a Lock Haven with 3,000 kids can compete with a Penn State, right, with 50,000 kids, where in football that would never happen, but in boxing, they're as good as the coach can make them, or the facility, what they have. So it one of the greatest things I think about college boxing is it doesn't matter what school you're from, whether it's a large school, small school. The boxing is up to the boxer, and is up to the coach and whoever coaches him.
Yeah. What do you see the difference? You've worked both gambits from the traditional amateur LBC tournaments in the state, Golden Gloves. What do you see the difference between that and college boxing as organizations?
The honesty, and I think you and I talked about it. The majority of college coaches, boxing college, whether assistants boxed in college, there's a great deal of honesty. When I say a kid's green, that kid's going to be pretty green.
Yeah.
If I say a kid is, hey, he's 2-5, but his 5 bouts were close decisions. Like, this kid's tough. This kid could throw hands. Where we may do a local show and a kid says, he's 2-5. He's not that good. So the coaches are a little bit. I find the greatest difference is the honesty with the coaches.
They're looking out for their fighters.
They look out for their fighters, and they're honest. They're honest, right?
Well, you know what? You have a kid going to college. I think as a coach, not only as a college coach, but as a regular coach, you got to be honest. You can't put your kid into a situation where he's over his head.
Right.
Or he's overmatching another fighter.
And that's what doesn't happen a lot. And happens a lot in these local shows.
Because it's harder, I think, these coaches, it's getting harder to match fighters. And not everybody wants to go out of their comfort zone. Everybody wants to fight locally. It's easy. We fight the same people over and over again. We're not gaining anything from that. A fighter's not gaining. Once you see a fighter, who, okay, you're going to be going somewhere through an amateur ranking. Maybe the Nationals are on the board, but maybe not, whatever. But we see you going through the Golden Gloves, progressing. Okay? That fighter has to get out of the comfort zone. Okay? And for me, I want whatever kid I have, whether it's an amateur or pro, if you're going to box, we got to take you out of that comfort zone and see what we have. Because if I don't know what I have.
Right.
You might be a great gym fighter.
Right.
You might kick everybody's ass in the state of Connecticut. That's great. You know what I mean? We see it all the time. How many fighters fought this guy 5 times as an amateur?
Right.
What do you gain?
Right.
What do you gain by that?
We're
Coach?
actually going up to Canada. I have a kid who's 3-4, and the only matchup up there was a 5-0 kid. And the coach had showed me the bouts that he fought, and then I wasn't that comfortable, but I put it back on my kid, and I said, hey, if you want to be good, you got to fight good. You've got 7 fights. You may be 3 and 4, but you got 7 fights. You're not getting the kids with 2 fights anymore, or 3 fights.
No.
You're gonna get 7, 8, 9, 10 fights. That's where you're at. And he said, hey, let's do it, coach. And I said, hey, let's just go up there. Let's just have a good time. Let's just go out and box and have a good time and enjoy it and kick this kid's butt.
But you know what? You're going to fight a 5-0 kid, 3 and 4 kid. Maybe 4 of those losses, 2 of them were questionable. Right? So now he's 5 and 2.
Right.
Say, or whatever, right? But now you're going to come back. It's like preseason, right? We're going to go play the best team out there. So when we get back in our conference, we're going to be ready to go through who we got to go through.
Right. Yep.
And even with fighters, you notice, right? We win fights we're supposed to lose. We lose fights we're supposed to win. Sometimes a loss is a win.
Right.
And for people who don't understand that,
right.
In the fight game, sometimes fighters are overmatched. Or a fighter is just physically better than one fighter. But that fighter goes out and he's a dog and he fights a fight, which not only frustrates his opponent but gives him confidence for what he's got to go back.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I'm with you. I mean, I believe you got to fight up. I don't believe you got to fight 50 amateur fights. I think 20 or 30 is a good comfort level, as long as you're fighting good. These kids with, and I'll ask your opinion, who have hundreds of amateur fights, how much quality is in that fight?
Right. Right. I agree.
How many quality fights can you
Right.
have in 100 fights,
Right.
Coach?
Right. Right.
As opposed to a kid who fights 30 fights and says, you know what? Out of his 30 fights, 15 fights were in national tournaments fighting top-ranked fighters.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And then it happens in the pro level. You almost want to erase the first 10 or 15 fights because they're going to be, just about everybody's either going to be 0-0 or have a losing record. Trying to.
Well, you see the progression in a pro level, and I get it. There's money involved. I get it. People have investments.
Right.
They want to build the investment. I get it. But you know what? Sometimes you're doing a kid injustice.
Right. Right. Yeah, because you're beefing a kid up that he's not going anywhere. He's not going outside of New England,
Yeah.
I mean to get 100, amateur bouts. I don't know. It's kind of.
I mean, I see it. Look, I love the sport, and for me, watching a kid at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old boxing. They're having fun. It's
Right.
great. It's great, right? The flip side to that is some of these kids are fighting so much, and you hear the parents talking. How can you tell a kid, let's call it 10 years old, where he's going to be when he's 18 or 16?
Right.
Just let them go and have fun.
Right. Right. Yep.
And I see parents taking kids to tournaments let that kid go have fun. Let him eat a cheeseburger. Let him eat a piece of pizza once in a while. You know what I mean? When he's 14, or 13, that's when you'll really see if he's got what he wants to put into the sport. Then you can change him up a little bit like that. It's like I used to tell parents, Little League parents, nobody ever drafted a 12-year-old kid out of Little League. So what the hell are you yelling at the kid for?
Absolutely.
I don't see the Yankees coming down here to sign that kid.
Right.
Let them have fun.
Right.
Right. And I think, to me, in boxing, more does not mean better when it comes to fighting, as having as many fights. I don't know how you feel about that. You're in a little more controlled environment with your fighters. As far as in the college level.
Yeah, I
you're
mean,
not fighting them.
Right. My kids, if they come out their freshman year, they may end up with 30 fights, 35 fights. I get somebody who comes out sophomore, junior year, they may have 15 fights. That's it. 15 college fights. That's your career.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, though. So you have kids that come. They may not compete the first year.
Right. I have a female that's boxing Ohio State. She came out as a freshman. Really couldn't chew gum and walk at the same time.
Right.
Not a very tough girl at all. Came at 178. I said the top female weight class was 165. She busted her butt all summer at Johnny Callis' gym. She's down to 164. She's getting her first bout. Took her a whole year before she even getting to get a bout. But yeah, I have kids that'll be with me for 1 or 2 years before I get them a fight.
Now, how does a kid stay motivated like that? You know what? Because we're not talking about, they still got to come and train.
Right.
3 days a week. They got to do their running. They got to be in shape. They got to be ready. How are you finding the motivation of a kid like that?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you have to get them to tell them that, you just got to trust me. You have to trust me. When it's time, we'll get it done. I want to make sure that when it's time, we're going to put you in there and you're going to win. I don't want you to get hurt and you're going to win.
Right.
And we'll get there. We'll get there. You just got to stick with it, and we'll get there. I've always told them that you don't learn to play the piano in one day.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a while.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to boxing. It's not just two guys going in there and just throwing hands.
There's a lot of layers. Now, you've been there a while now. There has to be some really good talent coming in.
I got some great
lately, I know the 10-fight rule that you talked about, but you get a kid walk in off the rip, are you putting them right in there? Or are you letting them go through the program?
Yeah, I'll ease him a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's the tough part. If I get a kid with some experience, I still want him to do things my way.
Yeah, he's got to adapt to your system. But that all being said, he comes walking in and he's or she, and everything being equal, are you putting him in there?
Yeah, I get a couple this semester that we box the 8th and 9th of November, and I'm going to try and get them. I'll probably get them somewhere around mid October sparring.
Yeah.
And we'll see how they react. If they, as people look like Sugar Ray Leonard hitting the mitts, but when they get in the ring, right? I mean, a kid that I thought was tough, and is very athletic and can hit the mitts exactly the way I'm telling them. You put him in the ring, and they couldn't take a punch worth a damn. But I do have a lot. I got a lot. I'm very excited about this year. Very excited, yeah. For my male and female teams.
Now, getting to that point, gauging your fighters before you fight. Are you going – now, I know you use Cobra a lot. Who are you putting your guys in? Are you bringing other fighters in to spar with your guys and say, look, I need you to work with him and him and him and see to gauge where they're at? Or are you sparring off against each other?
Yeah, mostly with each other, but I'll mix it up. But we're going to go this Sunday. We're going up to Central City up in Springfield.
Yeah, Dean Fay.
Yep. And I'll bring some kids up there, and we'll do some sparring there.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to try and set a date up with the Nolan brothers up in Massachusetts to go up there. So we'll try and we'll do a Friday here and there down at Coba, just to get them some other because if I have only two 185s and I have nobody else at their level, they spar each other all the time. I mean.
Yeah,
I know what punch you throw them before you even throw it because we're sparring each other 3 days a week.
Yeah,
so that kind of gets tough. But I have a good nucleus of kids that we're able to mix it up. I've been pretty fortunate with that. So I may have 3 or 4 185-pounders that I can keep rotating around, or I have a 175-pounder that can spar with a 185-pounder. So
they know
so
how
they're
to
not
move
getting
around.
stale, right? They're not getting stale.
Yeah,
that's a key thing though.
Yeah, I mean, I think having the ability, fortunate again, also your location. There are good gyms around you,
right?
And you could go to Mass.
Right.
You're not that far to go across the border. But, with you, how do you juggle it? With, your job?
Yeah.
How do you juggle it?
Lack of sleep.
Yeah, lack of sleep. Like the rest of us, right?
Right. Lack of sleep. Yeah. It's just, for me, it was a passion since a kid, and it's recently grown into an obsession.
Yeah.
It really has.
So was it always boxing for you growing up?
No, it was football. I actually went to Central Connecticut State University to play football, and found out they had a boxing team, and gave up a little bit of money they gave me to play football, and ended up boxing my other 3 years there. So Dad wasn't too happy about it, but he had grown into liking it. He liked it.
I think it's boxing. It's a tough stigmatism with parents in the beginning, but once you get into the sport, it's it kind of grabs you.
It's a great sport, and especially college. And I tell them all, especially my females, you have to put this down on your resume. You put this down on your resume, and it says something about your character. You stepped into a ring, and they could care. When you go for that job interview, they could care less that you were the night manager at Cumberland Farms. They're going to say, tell me about this boxing thing you did at UConn, and they're going to want to know about that. It's a great resume builder.
Yeah, well, you know what? And the female end of it is too. Right now, boxing is hot in the female. Females are out there right now. There's a lot of talent. We've had some, I've had Stevie Coleman, Maureen Shea. I've had a couple others on. Boxing right now, there is some really, really talent out there right now, and I think there's more females that want to be involved in combat sports. But you're right. But getting to the point of boxing, it's like, we'll go back to what people don't know. One fight out of your life. And I tell kids, like, I have some kids that are a little challenged, that are young kids that I train in. Getting them to hit a bag, getting them to do jump rope, getting them to do 45 minutes to an hour of a boxing workout. And I tell them, I said, look, you're hitting a speed bag. I said, bring me 5 of your friends in here, and we'll see who can hit that speed bag like you. I said, what you're doing is not easy. And these are some kids that are not competing. Now you take it to people who compete. So whether you have one fight or 50 fights, you can walk away and say, I have one fight.
Right.
You can tell your grandkids, your kids, whatever. There's amateur or pro. I had one fight. You had one fight. Well, and this is what I did to prepare for it. And it's life, up and down. How do you react?
Right.
When you get your ass kicked, how do you react? Do you come back? If things aren't going your way, you're not feeling it that day, but you still got to go run. How do you react? We judge by character.
Right.
See what you do.
Absolutely.
Well, like you said, you got guys running on the app. What are you doing when no one's looking?
Right.
Are you doing your running? Are you doing your working? Are you eating properly?
Right.
Are you training? But, the future, what do you see for the future of UConn boxing?
Well,
you're chasing that national championship.
We are.
Honestly,
we are.
To see that would be a great achievement for the state of Connecticut, I think.
So on the
for
way,
a lot of us, not just you and
Oh.
your program, but I think a lot of people, because I say the state of Connecticut gets overlooked in boxing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Willie Pep, probably the greatest boxer ever from Hartford, Connecticut. Last year in September, I had them all write down their goals for the season. And I had written down that I said, we got to be realistic. If you have no bouts, don't write down I'm going to be a national champ, right? Say I want to win 2 bouts or 1 bout. If you had a losing record, write down I want to have a winning record this year. And I had written down that I wanted to take 3rd place. And we were 4 points away from finishing from 3rd place team-wise. So on the plane, I'm going home, and I'm looking at pictures. And I'm looking at, they have a picture of all the national champions, and I'm looking at it, and then I started looking, and I got off the plane, and I said to my kids, tell me one thing you notice about this picture, and none of them can get it. We had 2 national champions last year, our first time ever. Army Air Force, and Navy all had 2 national champions. I said, we're right there. We're right there. They didn't have 4 or 5 national champions. We all had 2 national champions. So where do I see it? I have probably 4 years left at UConn. I want a national title. I want a national title. I want it for them. I want them to have a national title and get that darn sign on 84.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be a great testament. I know you spent a lot of time, people who know you around the state. You're out there advocating for your team and your sport. You're involved with a lot of coaches, and you're taking care of your guys during the off season and your girls, and you're definitely one of the better guys in the sport out there as far as
thank you.
Putting in time, and to see it at almost the next highest level, because college sports, whether it's a club or anything, is the next highest level compared to professional.
Right.
So, okay, maybe you're not, but to have a college national champion to compete, that says a lot, I think. That says a lot. One other thing I wanted to touch on, you guys are raising money on your own. You have a budget. It's not the basketball
Not the
team,
best.
right?
It's nowhere near the basketball
What are you guys
team.
flying on, cargo planes?
Yeah, we're,
So, how you overcoming that? And one thing with your budget, are you providing the equipment for these kids, or are these kids?
Yeah, we have all equipment. We have all the equipment. We have all equipment that we get through ringside, with a nice
No
discount.
national sponsor.
No national sponsor. I've thought about that, writing to companies and seeing if they would sponsor us.
Yeah. You figure with UConn, they're a Nike school.
Right.
I mean, some Nike shoes wouldn't be bad. If you guys are out there, maybe you want to, hook the brother up over
We
here.
would love it. We're right on our Facebook page. You could find us.
Some shirts. With
absolutely. So we do some fundraising. We do, and we actually host our regional qualifier too every year.
Yeah.
And we do that. We do that in Bristol. And that's the reason is I went to UConn and was offered no space. They had no space to do it. They told me to do it in the mat room. And I said, the mat room, we have barely enough for my team. I said, I'm getting schools from all over the East Coast. So then I went to
plus fans that want to come and see it.
Right, and I wanted to host it. I said, man, this would be great for us to host.
Right.
So then I went to Hartford. I hit about 5 or 6 hotels, and I said, hey, I want to do it in the ballroom. I want the ballroom for free, but you can collect the gate money. And they all, after they got done laughing, they kindly escorted me out of the hotel.
Yeah.
And then I went to an armory in Bristol. 3 high school coaches run this sports armory. They run this armory, and they do sports camps in there. And I went to them, and I said, hey, I want to bring this major college event into Bristol, Connecticut, a great sports town, ESPN. They said, all right, this is what we charge. And I said, well, I kind of want it for free. But you can keep all the gate money. And they've loved it. I mean, it has gotten so big in Bristol. We've really been pulling the town in. And they're making.
Who was there last year? You had some big schools there.
Yeah,
last
so
year.
Penn State was there, Army was there, Trinity College in Hartford, University Hartford. We had Lemoyne, which was a brand new school up near Syracuse.
So it's growing every year.
Growing every year. We just got Northeastern on. Hopefully they'll be ready to compete.
And this is in usually March, right?
This is in March,
Yeah.
3 weeks before our national tournament.
Okay.
And then the top 2 will go on to the national tournament.
Awesome. Well, tell us where we can find you guys. I know you're on social media, and people, look, if you want to throw a couple of bucks, you can tell you where it's going to go to. Great program out there. So
yeah, so we're on Facebook. It's under UConn Boxing fan page.
Yep.
You can message me on there. I can guarantee and show you the receipt. Any money that you donate will go directly 100% to our team. And I take no money from that. I don't take no money from the kids' dues or anything like that.
Right.
And if not, just follow us. Follow us on UConn Boxing fan page.
Now, real quick, any of your events streamed?
We're going to probably look. So the NCBA ones are streamed.
Right.
Ohio will stream. And we'll usually throw it on our site. Penn State always streams their show, which is October 12th. And we'll put it on our site. So if you join that Facebook site, we'll put it on there where the stream will be.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we can look for you in the future.
absolutely.
So, Coach, we have a little bit of tradition here of the way we kind of finish up, and I hit everybody off with a couple of questions. And first question I ask, and I know you're going to get what it is, but I've had individuals who haven't, okay, is if you were in a foxhole, and I had somebody who didn't know what a foxhole was, so it was a little tough to navigate around that one.
Okay.
Who are you taking with you?
Johnny Callis.
Okay. That was quick.
Johnny Callis.
He's feisty.
My mentor, my friend, my brother. Yeah. I've known him for
having Johnny on the
30-some
show
years.
real quick is like, seeing him out there and talking to him, but talking to him for an hour here, he's a very, very...
I would take Johnny Callis because Johnny Callis would probably talk the enemy into letting us go.
Yeah, but I didn't realize he was such a
He's a
tough
great
fighter.
talker.
Yeah, he's a great talker.
Incredible fighter.
I didn't realize
Incredible
that.
fighter. Probably
Yeah,
could have
because
went
he doesn't
pro.
talk about it that much, but
Yeah.
we talk. But okay, that's good.
Yeah.
3 guests for dinner, dead or alive. Who are you taking? Your choice.
3 guests for dinner. Probably Chuck Wepner. Chuck Wepner from Bayonne.
Bayonne Brawler.
I'm from New Jersey.
Okay.
I used to hang out at the club in my town. The younger George Bush. And let me think for the third one. Boy, that's a tough one. My dad, who passed away.
It's a good one right there. That's a good one. Well, Coach, we appreciate you coming down. Coach Mike Campisano, UConn Boxing Coach. Give them a look this season. If you can support this program, please reach out to them on Facebook. Whatever you do, I'm sure will be helpful for these young kids, these young athletes. But he's going to be putting the boxing program, I really feel we're going to see another national champion in the University of Connecticut. It's not going to be basketball, men's or women's. No disrespect to that. We're going to see that boxing side. I appreciate you coming on. And train hard, train smart. We'll see you in the next round of Coach's Corner.
I'm Coach Dave. Welcome back to Coach's Corner.
Come on.